Hi, my name is Marcia Mata,
Hi, I'm Cindy Campos.
I'm Ashley Wang.
And I'm Ryan Hosozawa.
and today we are going to present our research on citizen participation and its effect on public policy. Our research question is, how much impact does citizen participation have on public officials in policymaking in low-income neighborhoods? We decided to research this question further because policy public officials create in low-income neighborhoods have the potential to bring about change through engaging the community and increasing public participation. Citizen participation promotes policy reformation by influencing public officials to increase proximity with citizens to bring about change. This is very important in low-income neighborhoods. Cindy will explain more on the next slide.
Now, you might be asking yourself, well, why is our research question important? Why does it even matter? Well, I'm here to tell you why less participation in low-income neighborhoods means greater neglect in these environments, which leads to complex issues such as an increase in crimes like drugs, prostitution, gang activity, and street crime. An increase in crimes leads to a poor lifestyle for those who are a part of these environments. However, that can all change through citizen participation, as communicating with public officials can play an influence in policymaking. Studies show that in cases where citizens participated in their communities, it led to supportive resources, like welfare programs for neighborhoods residents appointed by officials. There have been cases where residents came up with financial needs to integrate policies.
The existing literature on low-income citizen participation tells us several things. We will go into further detail later. The literature contains numerous studies on how policies are impacted by citizen participation, but not specifically a representation of low-income voters. Here, we are taking the studies of citizen participation and applying it to the low-income neighborhoods and seeing how it affects public policy. The purpose of this study is to further the understanding of policymaking in low-income neighborhoods to see how they are impacted by participation as opposed to participation in higher-income neighborhoods. The central phenomenon here will be the participation levels of these citizens and how the policies in their districts represent the political attitudes of the low-income voters in contrast to the higher-income voters. Some themes that will arise are different levels of participation in multiple low-income neighborhoods, as well as the types of policies that these neighborhoods favor. We are expecting similar favored policies. The study benefits citizens in these low-income neighborhoods by informing them of how their legislators represent their interests in terms of policymaking. It could also encourage people who are not passionate about voting to vote more frequently in the case of a skewed level of representation among higher income voters.
In the article, Government's Complexity and Democratic Participation, How Citizens and Public Officials Harness the Complexities of Neighborhood Decline, by Hendrik Wagner, he describes that the deliberative model of governance points to the deliberation between individuals on issues is central to decision-making, where he then observed two neighborhoods that followed this model, of which one created a night prevention project and the other a neighborhood council. I will note that the deliberative model of governments increases proximity in procedural processes and brings about diversity as both public officials and community residents are collaborating with one another to harness complexity issues. The first neighborhood that created the Night Prevention Project helped solve complex issues that public officials weren't even aware of, such as drug houses that were within their neighborhoods, while the Deventer Neighborhood Council made public officials aware that the garbage company was only making rounds once a week when their contract with the state/city specifically states that they need to make two. Once public officials became aware of this issue, they implemented policies so that things like this could not happen again, thus creating interdependence between both parties, which shows a positive relationship with organizational collective efficacy.
Hi, so I will be talking about the disadvantaged citizens. Disadvantaged citizens is an important topic in the topic of policy. so I'll go more in depth about it. First and foremost, citizens who participate in their neighborhood and community affairs are more likely to bring positive change to their community. Hence, this means that communities with citizen engagement have a better living condition compared to conditions with low citizen engagement. As Sydney previously mentioned, citizens with low engagement in citizen community affairs are more likely to be affected by issues such as high crime rates, drugs, and prostitution. However, citizens who face these issues are also more likely to get involved in community activities to solve the issues they face in their neighborhood and community. This is because individuals tend to have strong ties with one another, and because they have the strong ties, they believe that working together can help make a difference and bring more effort to improve living conditions. Going forward, I will now talk about our hypothesis. We hypothesize that citizen participation and engagement in low-income neighborhoods have an influence on policy reform and bringing forth change to low-income communities. This is our hypothesis because it helps bring about shared interests that are discussed between public officials and residents to improve issues in low-income neighborhoods.
For our methodology, we will be using a case studies approach to gather our data. More specifically, we will use the method of difference, which compares two similar cases with different outcomes to determine what causes those outcomes. Ideally, we will find low-income cities and neighborhoods with identical demographics, socioeconomic levels, and preferred policy, but have different outcomes in terms of their ideology of elected officials and policies that pass. We will use a qualitative approach and make observations to see how much engagement occurs in these cities, and if that level of engagement influences what types of policies get passed.
After reviewing our data, our findings may likely suggest that low-income communities have a much lower rate of participation. One reason could be because of the time and money constraints lower-income families have. They may not have the time to engage with public officials because they may work 2 jobs and need to take care of their family as well. In addition, looking at communities where policies benefit the community, the study suggested there was an increased amount of participation between the communities and public officials. When policies are implemented that help the community, people are more likely to go out and engage with public officials since they want to show their support for that policy. As a result, the increased participation among the people led to a change within the community with an effective public policy. When public officials create policy that directly benefits low-income communities, then the people will be more likely to engage and participate in bettering the community.
Once again, we're looking at a research question that asks, how much impact does citizen participation have on public officials' policymaking in low-income neighborhoods? After further analysis, our hypothesis has proven to be correct, as citizen participation and engagement in low-income neighborhoods does have an influence on policy reform and bringing forth change to low-income communities. Evidence shows that participating increases interdependence and proximity as it leads to solutions for complex issues, such as criminal activity through neighborhood watch groups coordinating with public officials. Hence, citizen participation does play an influence in policymaking in low-income neighborhoods. As a relationship begins, our study contributes to further literature on citizen participation in policymaking as we have provided the type of models that are effective in the influence of decision-making, such as the deliberative model of governance or even creating neighborhood councils. Our contribution is important because it means that low-income neighborhoods can be improved with the help of its residents and by working with local public officials. Thank you.